Well, that didn't take long. It looks like the police have approached Suge Knight and asked him to testify against Keefe D in this 2Pac murder case. The U.S. Sun broke the news that police officers in Las Vegas have approached Suge Knight and his family to try to get Suge Knight to cooperate and testify against Keefe D if it goes to trial. Apparently, this happened a couple months ago and has been continuing on behind the scenes, so an insider source told The Sun all the details of what happened. The article says this: the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police officers have attempted to reach out to former Death Row Records boss in regards to being a witness or corroborator in the case they are building against the Compton gangster Keefe D. In the last several months, the U.S. Sun can reveal cops have spoken to Knight's family members and legal team about the possibility of him providing information about Keefe D on the night of the 1996 murder. A well-placed legal source said Suge is the best eyewitness in this case, given he stared down the barrel of the gun when Keefe and his nephew pulled up alongside them on that fateful night in Las Vegas. While members of Keefe's crew are all dead, Suge remains the only witness still alive to have a prime view of the crime. The article continues and quotes the person saying it's delicate to have Suge as a witness because of his troubled past and his actions in court over the years. The truth remains he is the one man who could identify Keefe D as being in the car at that time. That evidence would be significant and effectively be key corroboration to the DA's case. After this news broke out, of course, it was catching headlines everywhere. So TMZ did what they do, and they ended up getting a phone call with Suge Knight because he is locked up. And they asked him about this. Are you going to cooperate? What's your move? What are you thinking about the whole situation? And he answered it all.
Tell me what your reaction is to the arrest of Keefe D.
Well, surprise, number one, because I didn't think Keefe D would never get arrested. Nor do I want to see him get arrested. And whatever the circumstances, if he had an involvement with anything, if he didn't have any involvement in anything, who want to see? I wouldn't wish somebody going to prison on my worst enemy.
The DA says that Keefe D was in the car with his nephew, and that presumably his nephew, according to the DA, is the one that shot 2Pac, and that it was done with the full knowledge of Keefe. Do they have it right?
There was only two people in the car. And Pac not going to tell the story. I ain't going to tell the story, but I tell you this. And I never had nothing bad to say about Orlando because, number one, he wasn't the shooter. Number two, he came to my hearing and told to let me go and told the truth. They still didn't let me go.
If you are called to testify in this case?
I wouldn't be. I wouldn't be.
Why not?
Yeah, I wouldn't be.
Why not?
Well, number one, because I'm not going to get on the stand and testify on somebody for what?
They seem to be saying that Orlando was the shooter and Keefe was in on it, that he had full knowledge of what was going down, and it was revenge for Orlando getting beaten up by 2Pac and his team at the MGM after the Tyson fight. Is that correct?
No.
Then who shot 2Pac?
It wasn't Anderson, so that's all I got to say about that part.
To summarize, you are saying Orlando was not the shooter, although you won't say who the shooter was. You are not saying whether Keefe was involved in any way in the shooting, and you are saying that if you're called to testify by either side, you will not comply, you will not testify. Do I have that right?
1,000%. I wouldn't go, I wouldn't testify, none of that.
In that TMZ phone call, Suge Knight has made it clear that he will not testify. He also said that Keefe D had nothing to do with the shooting and that Orlando Anderson was not the person that let off the shots. I don't know what Suge Knight's stance is on lying on this or telling a different story. I think Suge Knight is trying to twist narratives just to throw a wrench in the police's detective work. And maybe he's trying to sell his own story in the situation. That's a possibility because he's facing a lot of time. He's still locked up. He got sentenced back in September of 2017 for running somebody over during the Straight Outta Compton movie shoot. He ran somebody over, killed them, and he's not eligible for parole till October 2034. Suge Knight, back in September 2017, got sentenced to 28 years in prison. He was 53 years old at that time. Doing the math, when he officially gets out or is eligible for parole in 2034, he is going to be 70 years old. So maybe he's trying to throw a wrench in this whole situation and throw a whole different story and say Keefe D had nothing to do with it. Orlando had nothing to do with it. I know who actually did it, and I'll tell you guys when I get out. Or he's saying this because maybe he wants the DA and the cops to throw a deal towards him and say, tell us everything that you know, and we'll get you out earlier. Because who wants to be locked up till they're 70 years old? And if you're even lucky to make it till 70 years old, most people, the average human dies at about 70, 80 years old. So I think Suge is just trying to throw a wrench in the situation and just trying to say, hey, I probably know more information than you guys, and I'm trying to keep it low. And if the DA wants that information, they're going to have to give me a deal, which I have no problem, with Suge Knight doing. Or maybe Suge Knight is trying to uphold his name and his reputation, or whatever he has left of his reputation, because Suge, plays by that street code of no snitching, no talking. So for him to go out snitching and talking would ruin whatever reputation he ever had left. Because back in the 90s, he was viewed as one of the most dangerous people in the music industry and hip hop. So that reputation, holds weight throughout the years. It has held weight. Obviously in the 2000s, 2010s, it didn't hold that much weight anymore, and his reputation kind of, took a huge hit. But, you don't want to go out in your old age as a snitch, especially with what he's done. So, definitely it's gonna make Suge Knight think about a lot of things, and I wouldn't be surprised if he does end up changing his mind, because at the end of the day, man, if I was in his situation, I would just tell, because you're about to be 70 years old. By the time you get out, you're gonna be 70. It's just not worth living. At that point, if your health is still good too, what do you got really to live? Much for at 70. At that point, it's just your life kind of has gone away, and you'd be lucky if you can survive to 80, 90. So if I was in his position, I would tell. But overall, Suge is clearly not complying. They try to reach out to his family, and who knows what Suge knows. Like, those are the only two people that are alive that were there in that situation, and that saw everything. Pac's dead. Obviously, Big Dre's dead. The driver is dead, and Orlando Anderson is dead as well. So it's only Keefe D and Suge Knight, and it looks like Suge Knight is not going to turn on Keefe D. Now, I can see a situation where Suge Knight decides to tell on Diddy and say something about Diddy and say, hey, this day had a hit on us, this and that, and Keefe D joins in on that and helps. Because at the end of the day, the police might want Diddy out of all this whole thing. That's a possibility. I'm not throwing Diddy's name under there. I'm not saying he did anything, but there's a chance that there is something under Diddy, and Suge Knight might just throw Diddy under the bus. It's not like he likes Diddy anyways. So I think, Suge is going to have to think this thing through. And if it goes to trial, he's going to have to, decide, does he want to testify? I think he should, man. I think for 2Pac's sake, if you really care about 2Pac, forget about all the street code stuff and do what you feel is right. Especially when you're in prison, man, you start reflecting about life. You start reflecting about all the good and bad things that you've done in life. Most people, become, Muslims and change religions and just completely change to, different people to repent from all the sins that they've done. And Suge Knight could potentially, take down that path and just be like, you know what? I'm just going to tell it all. This is what happened. This is what we messed up on. And Suge Knight, man, if he did a tell-all book of everything and just put it out on the table, that shit could be turned into a whole TV series. So I don't know if Suge Knight's ever done that. He's done a book where he's telling about a lot of things, but he has a chance to do that. Not only could he be free, but he could also make a shit ton of money when he gets out. So I think with Suge Knight saying this stuff, saying, oh, I don't know, it's only two people in the car. It wasn't Orlando Anderson. It wasn't Keefe D. I think he's playing the tactic of, yeah, I have a different story. I can sell it and I can make millions off it once I get out of here. But, that's if you make it to 70 years old, which there's a good possibility you can, but it's all about how you take care of your health. And I think Suge Knight, is dealing with diabetes in prison. So, that starts to eat you up as you get older. So there's a lot of different angles at this. I think Suge is just throwing something out there to kind of bait the detectives and police officers into possibly giving him, a deal. which is possible. So that's pretty much it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you guys think Suge Knight knows information that nobody else knows? Did Suge Knight see something that nobody else saw? Is Keefe D just lying in his story just to get out of the whole situation back in 2009? Did he lie about everything? The whole Orlando Anderson, the Big Dre situation, all that. Or do you guys think, Suge is just capping to try to get, a different story going so that he can get a deal and get millions? And, I think everybody has their own angle of why they're saying what they're saying, just to get their own kind of money and fame and clout out of the situation. And, I'm not knocking it. I think for us fans, for us people in the outside world, and for 2Pac's family, it's a messed up thing to do, because we're looking at this and we're like, man, we just want clarity on what happened. And, as 2Pac fans, they, want peace and just, hey, let's put this behind us. It happened. We're done. 2Pac's family as well, it would have been beautiful for 2Pac's mother to see, all this coming into fruition. Finally, somebody getting locked up for, the murder of her son. But I think, man, if I was Suge Knight, I would just tell it all and be like, listen, I'm going out like this because of this, and this reason. And not because I want to be a snitch, not because of this and that. I just want to let the world know that this is the story. This is my experience. This is what I experienced that night, and so on and so forth. But hey, Suge Knight is a street guy, goes by the street code. So I don't think he's gonna testify. If he does, it'll be the biggest thing ever. And I'm telling you, if they do cameras in there, it's gonna be bigger than the OJ situation. It's gonna be huge, especially if Suge decides to testify too. It's gonna be a whole different ballpark. And then Diddy's gonna get, maybe he's gonna get prosecuted and put up there, and so we'll keep our eye on this, and I'll keep you guys updated on if anything new happens.